Okay, so let's unpack this. We're doing a deep dive today,
Yeah.
right? Into the world of leadership under, well, extreme pressure.
Yeah, and those geopolitical flashpoints, it's intense stuff.
Exactly. And the shifting sands of domestic politics, too. It's a lot to cover.
It really is.
And our main source here, it's that recent book by Bob Woodward, War. Incredibly detailed.
That's the one. Yeah, Woodward really gets in there.
So our mission, basically, is to pull out the key stuff, the insights into how presidents, diplomats, military leaders, how they actually make these huge decisions.
With all the conflicting advice they get.
Right, and the weight of legacy, all of that. Think of it as the shortcut to getting informed without tackling, 1,000 pages.
Absolutely. And for you listening, the point is really seeing how these individual personalities and their beliefs, they really do shape global events. It's not abstract at all. It affects how you understand what's going on day to day.
Totally. You got to look at the people making the calls, right? So let's start there, presidential personas. What jumped out at me from Woodward was tracing Trump's traits way back, like that 1989 interview.
Oh, yeah, with Woodward and Bernstein. It's fascinating, isn't it? Even back then.
What was most revealing for you there?
Well, just how consistent he was, even back then. He called his public image a real act as opposed to the facade. And this deep belief in instinct, he said, instinctively. Instinct is far more important than any other ingredient.
More important than detailed plans, basically.
Exactly. And that whole thing about testing friendships by pretending he blew it.
Yeah, to see who sticks around. Classic loyalty test. And that line, I'm a great loyalist. I believe in having great friends and great enemies.
He was laying it all out, wasn't he? Even avoiding makeup and construction because it didn't look tough.
Right. The image was everything. And it wasn't just talk. That's the key insight here. These ideas, loyalty, toughness, instinct, they really drove his approach later on in the presidency.
You see it clear as day with January 6th, his reaction to Kevin McCarthy calling him begging for help.
Just completely dismissive. Well, Kevin, I guess these people are more upset.
About the election than you are?
Yeah, it's that unwavering, never fold mentality,
Yeah.
even when facing something like that.
And people around him saw it. Fiona Hill, right? Said his fragile ego made him vulnerable to manipulation.
Especially by someone like Putin, she thought. Yeah. And even post-presidency, his comeback motive wasn't just about policy. It was privately framed as vengeance.
Lieutenant General Kellogg called him Jekyll and Hyde. That's quite a description from a former advisor.
Speaks volumes, doesn't it?
And that never-fold mentality, it bled into some pretty wild foreign policy comments, too. Woodward mentions him talking about, painting F-22s with Chinese flags.
To bomb the shit out of Russia. Now, hypothetically, of course, but still. The idea itself is startling.
Still. And praising Putin, calling him smart, genius, savvy, even siding with him over U.S. intelligence agencies on the 2016 election interference. It shows a pattern, right? Operating on instinct, prioritizing that tough image, maybe sometimes over traditional diplomatic channels or even intel assessment.
Definitely. And there were real worries about the constitutional impact of some actions. General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs at the time.
Deeply concerned, according to Woodward, he was trying to protect the constitutional order. He even installed bulletproof glass at his home because of threats.
Wow. That really underscores the pressure cooker environment.
Yeah, intense times, no question.
But these kinds of pressures, these personal approaches shaping policy, they weren't just with Trump, obviously. Let's pivot now to President Biden. A very different path to power.
Right, decades of foreign policy experience shaping his approach.
His core philosophy seems to be great powers don't bluff. Though his team apparently debated the idea of strategic ambiguity. Jake Sullivan's poker analogy.
Right, the big stack of chips idea. If you've got a strong hand, maybe you have more room to keep adversaries guessing about your exact response. It's a classic foreign policy debate.
Makes sense.
But Biden's own experiences, particularly Vietnam, and remember, he unsuccessfully opposed adding more troops in Afghanistan, that really solidified a core conviction in him.
Which was?
Not to put U.S. troops into harm's way, if at all possible. That became a bedrock principle for him.
You really saw that with Ukraine, didn't you? Billions in aid, yes, but U.S. troops fighting, explicitly not on the table.
Exactly. A clear line drawn directly from his past experiences and judgments.
And it's interesting how that personal conviction plays out even in tricky allied relationships.
Oh, absolutely. His approach with allies like Israel has been called big hugs, little punches, public support, private pressure.
Woodward details some pretty blunt private feelings about Prime Minister Netanyahu, though.
Oh, yeah. According to the book, calling him a bad fucking guy, saying he doesn't give a shit about Hamas, even accusing him of lying. Pretty stark private language.
But publicly.
Publicly, it was consistently framed as long support of Israel. It's that pragmatic, maybe necessary balancing act leaders perform, even if it's, personally grating sometimes.
And on a purely human level, there was that moment of, well, tradition maybe. Trump leaving that shockingly gracious letter for Biden in the Oval Office.
Yeah, Biden told Psaki it was surprisingly kind, a small detail, but it speaks to those underlying norms even amidst political turmoil.
Still, you can't ignore the personal toll. For Biden, sources Woodward spoke to said the real war was his son Hunter's legal battles.
Yeah, that it derailed Biden emotionally much more than any outsider or the public realized, pulled him off an even keel more than even the wars in Ukraine or Israel.
It really highlights how deeply personal lives intersect with global leadership, doesn't it?
Absolutely. You can't separate the person from the presidency.
It's a key takeaway for you listening, I think. When you observe these leaders, look for those personal histories, those character traits. They're often guiding the major policy decisions in ways we don't always see on the surface. All right, moving into our second segment, let's shift to the geopolitical hotspots. Ukraine, specifically, right on the brink of invasion. Woodward sets the scene dramatically back in April 2021. That unprecedented massing of, 110,000 Russian troops?
Right on Ukraine's border, Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, called it Chekhov's gun.
Meaning, if you put a gun on stage in the first act,
it has to go off by the third. Yeah, the buildup itself created an almost unbearable tension.
And Woodward dives deep into Putin's mindset here, these deep-seated imperial ambitions.
His conviction that Ukraine is not a real country, just a product of the Soviet era. He felt Russia was robbed, historically.
And labeling Ukrainian leaders neo-Nazis, despite Zelensky being Jewish, it's jarring rhetoric.
It is, and the context U.S. intelligence provided is chilling. They saw Putin as driven by extreme insecurity, aiming to restore the old Russian Empire.
An empire which, in his view,
doesn't include Ukraine as a truly independent state. And the relatively easy takeover of Crimea back in 2014, that likely boosted his confidence, maybe made him miscalculate.
Woodward also mentions those weird psychological games Russian intelligence played.
Yeah.
Like in a U.S. diplomat's apartment in Kiev.
Yeah, completing a kid's puzzle, restringing shoelaces, small things, but designed to say, we're everywhere, we can get to you. Really unsettling stuff.
But then there's this incredible U.S. intelligence coup. A human source inside the Kremlin.
That's what Woodward reports, someone providing exquisite insight into Putin's actual war plans. Just extraordinary, if true.
And that intel enabled CIA Director Bill Burns to go to Moscow in November 2021, secretly.
Right, to deliver Biden's message directly. We know what you're planning. Burns told Putin point blank, we are alarmed. A major invasion. That would be a mistake.
And Putin's reaction?
Dismissive, apparently. He didn't argue with the description of the preparations, just sort of doubled down on his view that Ukraine is weak and divided, and that Russia's interests demanded control over Ukraine's choices.
So the warning didn't deter him?
Clearly not. It seems his mind was made up. His risk appetite had grown.
So then the diplomatic push became frantic, right?
Yeah.
Vice President Harris reaching out to Macron.
Yeah, arguing Putin saw Europeans as weak, trying to rally a united front. Macron was apparently skeptical Putin would actually go through with a full invasion.
And Blinken had that bizarre debate with Lavrov.
Oh, the Alice in Wonderland meeting, yeah. Over the Minsk agreements, Lavrov just denying any invasion plans, blaming NATO. Blinken knew it wasn't true, but Lavrov was a master of deflection. What about Edzism?
So the U.S. took the unusual step of going public with the intelligence. That Washington Post headline.
December 3rd, 2021, Russia planning massive military offensive, laying it all out, and using commercial satellite images.
A public downgrade of intelligence, they called it.
Exactly, to try and expose the plan, build international consensus, maybe make Putin think twice, but also to shape the narrative if or when the invasion happened.
Then things got really scary in late 2022. The assessment of potential Russian tactical nuke use went up to a coin flip?
Terrifying. Woodward describes exquisite intelligence, suggesting Putin was feeling desperate, loosening operational controls over those weapons.
And Russia has a lot of tactical nukes.
Around 2,000 at the time, yeah, way more than the U.S. So the U.S. spun up a secret Tiger team to game out nuclear response options.
That must have been incredibly tense. Call it probably the most hair-raising moment of the whole war.
You had Defense Secretary Austin telling his counterpart, Shoigu, just flat out don't do it, and General Milley pressing General Gerasimov on Russia's actual nuclear doctrine, trying to gauge the red lines.
Direct, urgent appeals to prevent the unthinkable.
Absolutely. High stakes doesn't even begin to cover it.
And meanwhile, the challenge for Ukraine on the ground remains immense, being outgunned 10-1 in artillery.
The fall of Avdiivka, driven by ammunition shortages, it's brutal.
And that huge $60.8 billion U.S. aid package got held up in Congress for so long.
Yeah, stalled largely due to Trump's influence behind the scenes. Woodward reports Trump calling leaders suckers for sending aid, shows how domestic politics can have life or death consequences globally.
It's just this incredible mix, isn't it? Psychological games, intelligence breakthroughs, diplomatic standoffs, and leadership decisions under unbelievable pressure. Okay, let's shift focus now, segment 3. The Middle East, tragically, ablaze again, October 7th, 2023. The shock of that Hamas attack.
Massive. 3,000 rockets, fighters crossing the border into Israel. Netanyahu declared war almost immediately.
And the intelligence failure behind it was just staggering.
According to Woodward sources, yeah, Israel apparently had the full Hamas plans almost a year earlier.
A year. But they...
Well, nobody believed it. They assessed Hamas just wasn't capable of pulling off something that audacious, that complex, a catastrophic misjudgment.
And it completely shattered Netanyahu's previous strategy, right? The buying quiet approach.
Totally discredited it. Allowing aid and workers into Gaza was meant to maintain calm, but it clearly didn't prevent this. So after October 7th, the narrative inside Israel shifted dramatically.
To seeing it as an existential threat.
Exactly, requiring Hamas to be wiped out not just for revenge, but to restore Israeli deterrence and security.
And for President Biden, the hostage situation became central.
An emotional spine, Woodward calls it. Getting them back safely was a critical measure of success, personally and politically.
And Biden himself intervened directly to stop the conflict from spreading immediately, didn't he, on October 11th?
That's a key moment, Woodward details. Israel was seriously considering a preemptive strike against Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Which could have been disastrous.
A massive escalation. So Biden got on the phone with Netanyahu during those 5 hours and 12 minutes of deliberation.
What did he say?
He urged caution, questioned if Israel could really handle Hezbollah's huge rocket arsenal, like 150,000 of them, and he reminded Netanyahu about the 45,000 U.S. personnel in the region, saying, I have skin in the game here.
Putting his foot down, essentially.
Trying to prevent a wider war. Blinken described the feeling among U.S. officials then as one of global vulnerability, immense pressure.
And getting humanitarian aid into Gaza was another huge fight.
Netanyahu initially refused, not a drop. Blinken apparently got frustrated with the delays, the bureaucracy, telling officials something like, you can't eat or drink an expert. People needed actual food and water now.
There was also that controversy early on about the hospital bombing.
Right, the Al-Ali hospital. Huge international outcry blaming Israel initially, but U.S. intelligence later concluded it was a malfunctioning rocket from Palestinian Islamic Jihad that hit the parking lot.
But the damage to perception was already done.
Exactly. Shows how fast narratives form in a crisis, often before facts are clear.
And the whole day after scenario remains so difficult. What happens after the fighting stops?
It's incredibly challenging. Israel found Hamas units popping back up even in areas they thought were cleared. You can destroy fighters, but eliminating an ideology, much harder.
Woodward paints a grim picture of the Hamas leader in Gaza, Sinwar.
Yeah, describing him as having a death wish, living in his underground kingdom, seemingly detached from the suffering of Gazans above ground.
Meanwhile, diplomatic efforts for that day after are complex. Saudi Arabia's position.
Crown Prince MBS demanding quiet in Gaza first, but also a clear political pathway for the Palestinians for a state before any normalization deal with Israel, linking the issues tightly.
And the region kept heating up. Houthi attacks on ships.
The drone attack killing 3 U.S. service members in Jordan by an Iran-backed militia, leading to Biden ordering retaliatory strikes.
Then came that direct Iran-Israel exchange in April 2024. Iran's Operation True Promise.
Nearly 300 missiles and drones launched at Israel, but most were intercepted thanks to Israeli defenses and help from the U.S. and others. Damage was unbelievably small, remarkably.
But Israel felt it had to respond.
They did, but with a calibrated strike near Isfahan in Iran. More symbolic, sending a message, we can hit you accurately anywhere, but designed not to trigger all-out war. A dangerous tit for tat.
In recent assassinations, a Hezbollah commander, a Hamas leader in Tehran, just keep tensions high.
Yeah, it makes that muscle memory Jake Sullivan talked about crucial. U.S. diplomats constantly working channels trying to de-escalate, prevent that wider war everyone fears. It's a constant balancing act on a knife edge.
Okay, let's bring it home now. Segment 4. Domestic divisions and how they tie into all this,
Yeah.
especially looking at the 2024 election. The southern border remains a huge flashpoint.
Absolutely. Over 2 million migrant apprehensions a year in 22 and 23, and a real shift in where people are coming from.
Not just Central America anymore.
Right. Significant numbers from China, India, other places far beyond the region. It complicates the picture, the politics, the logistics.
And the politics are just incredibly polarized, aren't they?
Totally. Republicans generally point to Biden's policies, what they call a more humanitarian approach, using terms like invasion. Biden and Democrats tend to blame Republican obstructionism, especially for blocking that bipartisan border deal.
The deal Biden said contained the strictest border measures to date.
Yeah, but Trump came out strongly against it. Woodward quotes him saying, "Zero chance I will support this horrible open borders betrayal," and telling senators to please blame it on me.
He wanted the issue alive for the election.
It seems clear. He preferred the political weapon over a bipartisan solution at that moment.
Which leads us to the presidential race itself, which was just completely transformed, wasn't it? That June 27th, 2024 debate.
A seismic event. President Biden's performance was widely described as stumbling, incoherent. It created an immediate crisis for his political survival.
Trump didn't hold back in mocking it.
No, saying, "I really don't know what he said." I don't think he knows what he said either. Just pouring salt in the wound.
And behind the scenes, this wasn't entirely out of the blue, was it? There were concerns already.
Woodward reports that, yeah, concerns about Biden's age, his stamina were already circulating among donors, even staff, describing interactions sometimes as painful, rambling, feeling he seemed old, out of it.
Plus the personal toll we mentioned earlier, the Hunter Biden situation.
Sources told Woodward that was eating the president alive with anguish, really impacting his focus and energy levels significantly.
All culminating in that political earthquake on July 21st. Biden withdrawing.
And endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris, a truly historic, unexpected turn.
Yeah, the Trump campaign reacted instantly.
Oh, yeah. Jason Miller, a top strategist, laid it out bluntly. Define Harris immediately as incompetent and radically liberal. He even said, "We're not so big on the art of subtlety in Trump world."
Setting the stage for a very aggressive campaign against her.
No question.
So now Harris faces this immense challenge. She has to navigate these complex issues, like the Middle East.
Right. Woodward notes she affirmed her lifelong support for the state of Israel to Netanyahu, but also cautioned him about how the unconscionable humanitarian crisis in Gaza was affecting views, especially among younger Americans.
Pushing for that political horizon for Palestinians.
Which Netanyahu resisted, saying, "We can't do those things now." So it highlights the incredibly difficult diplomatic tightrope she or any leader has to walk on that issue.
So wrapping this all up, what does this deep dive mean for you, our listener, trying to make sense of it all? We've seen these complex links between leadership styles, global crises, domestic fights.
Yeah, what's really striking is that constant interplay. Personal beliefs driving global actions. The fog of war, not just on battlefields, but in diplomacy, in intelligence gathering. And it hammers home that even with, the best possible information, which they often don't have these critical decisions, come down to human judgment, instinct, risk tolerance.
And the consequences ripple out way beyond the immediate situation.
Exactly. Leadership, especially under this kind of pressure, is just fundamentally a human process, full of flaws, biases, personal baggage, but also moments of courage and conviction.
So a final thought for everyone listening. We've heard how leaders often rely on instinct, face immense pressure, work with incomplete information. In this messy, interconnected world, where would you draw the line? The line between being decisive and dangerously escalating things, especially when you're up against an adversary who maybe doesn't value human life the same way, or an ally whose actions could spark a wider fire.
Yeah, it's not easy, is it? There are rarely perfect choices.
Definitely something to keep thinking about as you follow these critical stories unfolding around the world.